Everybody, this week we're going to take our Pong prototype and turn it into Breakout. Breakout is a game of paddle and a ball and a bunch of blocks, and you're breaking the blocks and you're just trying to do that. We're also going to add a scorekeeper, something to keep track of the score. Excuse me. It's a very simple thing to do. I'll show you. I'll walk you through it. So in order to get started, we're actually going to first duplicate our scene. So just select your scene here, hit Command D. You should get another one. It should be should iterate, give it like another number. If we were to do it again, it'd be Pong 3. We don't want Pong 3 though, so let's get rid of it. Change Pong 2 into Breakout, and then double click on it to load it. The only thing that should change is the name up here, and then we can start editing things. Now this duplicating the scene instead of building it from scratch makes everything the way we had it already, and that's what we're looking for. There are a couple of changes, script changes that we're going to do this week, and a few configuration changes. We're going to add a rigid body onto our red paddle, which is the paddle we're going to keep. Our blue paddle, we're not going to keep. We're not going to have a rigid body on it. Those rigid bodies help keep your paddles from going off into space. They make it so that they'll hit the walls that we've built, the top and bottom walls, and stop. By increasing the mass to pretty much 1,000,000 and then hitting fixed angle, that ensures that the physics from the ball hitting the paddle doesn't disturb the ball at all. So if we were to play this and the ball shoots off, you can see that it's not actually moving. It doesn't affect my paddle at all. But if I turn off fixed angle and I reduce my mass down to 1, you'll see that it will greatly affect my paddle. And so my paddle just goes flying off, which is not what we want it to do. So make this a big number and then hit fixed angle. We should be good. The other thing we need to do is we need to open up our sprite file into or in Photoshop. So let's open Photoshop. We're going to add a white paddle shape in there, and the reasons will be clear here in a second. Okay. So you want to add this white paddle in here. The reason being is Unity will let us tint sprites separate from the material. And what that means is we can change the color of an individual sprite that we add in. So if we add this sprite in here, I was just using Blender, so I have to remember my excuse me. I have to remember my shortcuts. So if we have this white sprite in here, I can come over here to the color picker and change this color to be anything I want it. And the reason we do white is so that that hue stays true. We can also, select a pixel and pretty much select any color, any pixel we want from this pixel selector. So it's just up to you. We're going to just make a bunch of these guys and change their colors. Don't put them in here yet because we need to add a script onto them before we do anything else, and it's easier to just add that script and then duplicate after that script is added. That way it duplicates the script too. The scripts that we're going to be using for Breakout that are new, we're going to have one called Block Destroyer, which destroys the blocks, one that loads levels, which obviously loads levels, and then Scorekeeper, which keeps score. So once you've sort of got this settled, we're not going to do too much to change the configuration of the paddle or the ball. At least not. I'm not going to. You can if you want to. You can move your paddle in the X here. Back here, you can, if you want to, stretch it out, make it a little skinnier, do whatever you want to sort of change it. It is totally up to you how you want that to look. You can also change the speed. That's something that I didn't talk about last time with our paddle mover script, but if you want, you can take this number 4 here and just call it speed, and then come up here and set up that variable speed. Speed is a float. You might want to go ahead and give it a value to start off with, so I'm going to give mine 8. We're going to go twice as fast, 8.0, since it's a float. Just save that. The next thing we're going to look at is we're going to add this collision detection into our ball mover script. This will make it so that this little bit of math here makes the speed a little more random and also takes into account the velocity of the paddle. So it takes into account the speed of the paddle moving up and down to add like a little bit of English, that a little bit of spin onto the ball whenever it hits the ball. So the paddle velocity does now affect the ball by adding this little bit of script in here. So make sure you write it in here. Remember, you need to have all the capitalization needs to be exactly the same. All the punctuation needs to be exactly the same. It should all be exactly the same. Don't make it any different. Make sure, if it's not working, that you've got all your variables set up correctly, and everything else is as it should be. So, all right, once you've got that set up, we need to add a script on here to, let's remove our paddle mover script here. We need to add a script onto our blocks so they get destroyed. I'm actually going to go ahead and just delete the blue paddle, and we'll just work with this basic block here. We're going to add a box collider onto it. That should be exactly its dimensions. You can, of course, hold Shift and get those little green squares to adjust that size, but we want it to pretty much be exactly the same. The next thing we need to do is add the block destroyer script onto it. So you can just drag it down there. Now you'll see that there's a field down here called scorekeeper. Well, we don't have scorekeeper set up yet, so you can kind of safely ignore it for a minute. We're going to take a look at what block destroyer does. So this is very simple. You set up a variable called scorekeeper of type scorekeeper. So that's what that does is it looks for an object in the scene that has a script called scorekeeper on it. And we'll set that up in a minute because it's going to be sending a message to that script. It's going to be sending the add to score message that you see right here to add to the score. But for now, we just need to set up this collision. So function on collision enter 2D. Other collision 2D, so we're looking for a 2D collision, or collision in the 2D physics engine with another collider. If that other GameObject.tag is the ball, then we need to access the scorekeeper script and then add to that score. We're calling the function add to score, which is set up in scorekeeper. Then we're going to destroy this game object, so it's going to destroy the block. Very simple. So write that down exactly as it is, exactly as you see it. Once you have that done, your block is now set up, and you can arrange your blocks in your field as you want them to be. You can just duplicate your block here, move it around. It's up to you, kind of where you want it. Oops. Doesn't really matter to me sort of where you put them, what they look like. Actually, I should probably just set up the third one here. Again, totally up to you. I'm just hitting duplicate. If you want to get really fancy, you could do all this automatically by there you go. By writing an array, essentially, but we're not going to talk about arrays yet. If you know what an array is and you know how to do that, feel free. But for now, you can just do it by hand. It's not a big deal. I don't really care if you do it programmatically or if you just do it by hand. It's up to you. It's based on personal preference and skill level. We'll talk about arrays in a later class. It's not something that I'm overly concerned with in this class. I'll just move it up just a tiny bit. Okay, so essentially, breakout, that works. You can, if you want to, also twist it so that breakout is vertical. So all the blocks are up here and the paddle's down here. It's just a matter of turning the camera. Or I'm sorry, rotating all of your elements. If you wanted to just select, you could just select everything and then just rotate. About 90 degrees or so. Something like that. Of course, my camera did rotate with it, so let's rotate the camera back. And then you'd have to adjust your camera essentially. So either pull it out or change your dimensions on your camera if you wanted to. It's up to you. You just do what you want when you customize it. But I'm going to set mine up this way. So okay, all of my sprites are set up correctly. All my blocks are set up correctly. They all have the block destroyer and a collider. It's very important they have this collider. Now we need to set up the scorekeeper. So we're going to create a 3D text object in the world. Then you just gotta sort of move it where you want score to be. It looks super pixelated right now. That's fine. We're gonna fix that. Come over here to the text mesh where the text field is. You just put in 0. You can put in whatever you want, but I find 0 to be, a good indicator for positioning. We're going to change the anchor to the middle center and the alignment to center, and then we will move our object exactly where we want it to be. And then to get it to not be so pixelated, change the font size to something ridiculous like 120, and then just scale the actual object down. And that will give us a nice, there we go. That will give us a nice clean looking object. You can, of course, change the color to whatever you want it to be. I'm just using white for the heck of it. Fonts you can change, but you're going to need to load fonts into your scene. True type fonts, TTFs, are the best fonts to use. I would just make a folder called fonts and put it in there. Remember to try to keep your project hierarchy very organized. That's about it. Okay. We're going to call this guy, we'll call this score. You can call it scorekeeper if you want. It won't matter. It doesn't have the scorekeeper script on it yet. Once it does, then that's how the other objects will find it. So scorekeeper needs to be dropped onto the text mesh. Let's take a look at that script. So variable text mesh of type text mesh. So the first part is the variable I'm setting up to use and the rest of the script. The second part is the actual component that we're looking for, and that's this component here, this text mesh component of this object. Variable score 0, we're just setting the initial score, and then variable scorekeeper of type scorekeeper. We need this. It's going to be finding itself, which is a little funny, I guess, but we need that to happen. This is just, it's a bit of stuff that we just need to be in there. So on function start, scorekeeper variable is now game object, find object of type scorekeeper, so it's going to look through the scene for something called scorekeeper, make sure it's there. Text mesh variable is now the component text mesh, and then the add to score function that gets called in block destroyer, this fifth line of block destroyer. We're going to plus score, which just means add 1 onto the existing score. So plus just means take what you have and add 1 to it. And then text mesh.text, so that's affecting this text field of the text mesh object over here on the right. 2 open quotes, so that whatever that number is gets fed into that string. So open quotes means a string, plus score, and then close it with the score variable, and then close it with a semicolon. The score variable being up here. So whatever that score is, which we just added one onto, is what that will be. You could put in your own little message in there, and then it will append the number onto it. I don't do that. I just want the number. So, okay, that is Scorekeeper. So make sure you have it written exactly. If you need to pause the video, do that. But make sure it's exactly this. Okay, so our Scorekeeper is in there. The next thing we need to do is assign the text mesh object. If you just click on here, it will look for it. And that's the Scorekeeper object. And then we're going to look for the Scorekeeper script. And you can see all those things are just fine. We need to go back to all of our little blocks here. You can select all of them and then hit the Scorekeeper script. Just double click that and it will have filled that in for all of them. It should be all good now. Let's take a look. Oh, and our ball is bouncing in a very weird way. That was just a random fluke. There we go. Okay, so we're not getting collisions. It's not actually breaking the balls. And that could be because the ball is not tagged as ball. So you may need to add the tag ball. If you do, just hit add tag and then type in one called ball, capital B-A-L-L, which is what, oops, it's what the block destroyer script is looking for right here, B-A-L-L. So make sure you've got that tag in there and that that tag is assigned to the ball. And then hit play. Boop. And now it all works. So the next thing that we need to do, because obviously I don't have to play it if it's bouncing off that back wall, is we need to add a load level to the back wall. So what we can do is find that left wall, and then we're going to add load level to that script. Let's take a look at load level. So, okay, so this one is saying if you hit the space key, then it loads the level. We're actually going to adjust this to be on. We're going to make it if a collision happens with it. On collision 2D, enter other collision. Of course, spell collision correctly. Then open that. Application load level. But we need to set it up as an if because we don't want it to collide with just anything. Although the ball is the only thing it would be colliding with. If other.game object.tag equals to ball, then application load level. And that should work. Expecting end of function, found end of function. Too many ends of function. Okay. Too many of these things, apparently. It doesn't matter too much how this indentation, how many levels you have things indented. It's just what I'm doing. Okay, so we don't have any errors. Let's see if it'll actually work this time. Nope, it's not working. For some reason, still bouncing off that back wall. Oh, collision enter 2D. That's what I messed up. Okay. Where's what level here? Collision enter 2D. That's the problem. For some reason that doesn't throw an error, and I think that's just because the other collision 2D, because the 2D engine is so new that they're still kind of working on it. Function on collision enter 2D. Okay, all right, that should work. And the ball will go really slow. Okay, see, and then it just reloads if it gets to the bounce. Oh, that's super slow. I think we're gonna have to adjust the speed of the ball a little bit. I don't know why that's so slow. You can put that function update back in here so that you can manually restart it too. Function update. Actually, no, function get input. Yeah, function get input. Function update if get key dot or input get key space. Go get key down space location load level 0. We're loading level 0 if this level 0 is an index number for the for Unity. You can set the which level is the index level by going to build settings. It will automatically do the current one, but you can also just add current, and you'll see that the 0 shows up here, and breakout.unity is the one that is being loaded. If something else is different, then you just need to reorder them. You can reselect them. You can actually just change their numbers too, I think. No, you can't, but you can reorder them. So, okay. Apparently I messed something up. Location level. Oh, too many EOFs. Space. Oops. Space should be in quotes. Yeah. There you go. So hitting spacebar lets you redo it now. So if you get a random number where your speed is super slow, then you can restart it. You can also adjust that random range too for the speed variable for the ball. Okay, so that's how we make Breakout. Totally up to you. All right, so feel free to customize it any way you want to. Doesn't matter to me. You know, play around with it, get used to how Unity does things, experiment. But you need to have at least the basic functionality of the level loading manually and through hitting that far end of the screen. Also, you need to have the scorekeeper in there, and then have your blocks destroyed and all that jazz. All right, if you have any questions, you know how to reach me.